Welcome to the Transition Dialogue podcasts. My name is Alicja Pacewicz. I'm an expert in education at the Center for Citizenship Education in Poland. And this is part of a project that we have started some time ago with the participation of countries from the Eastern and Central Europe that have gone through transition from communism to, yes, we don't know exactly how to call the period we are in. Some countries say transition has ended in the 90s. It began in 1989 in Poland, but then went through the whole Eastern and Central Europe. And some people say it has ended in the 90s or in the moment when some of our countries entered the European Union. But there are others who are saying that we are still in transition. And it's very interesting and insightful to look into the period that we are going through. This is a very unique experience, the generational experience of not only one generation, the one that has brought the transition into life, but also all the generations that came later and are living the consequences of the political, social, economic transformation. This is a sort of a dream come true, not only from the political perspective of the fall of communism, but also a sort of a dream come true for a historian, for a social psychologist, for a sociologist. This big wave of changes that happened here is really something completely unique and not so easy to understand. Some people call it a self-limiting revolution. Others say it was just, one of the many social changes that the humanity went through. Whatever the perspective you take, it's incredible to look into how in our countries, in different countries, in Poland, Lithuania, Germany, Bulgaria, Russia, Ukraine, how it was done and what are the big differences between our different ways of transition, but also what are the similarities, the general patterns that we can observe. But the goal of the Transition Dialogue Project is not really to find the historical truth about transition. It's more about teaching transition and talking on transition, how the knowledge and perceptions of transition are formed and how they are then spread, and what is the relation, for example, between public discourse on what has happened in our countries and how it's then taught in the schools. So why are we doing this? We are doing this to really become more aware of how transition is and can be taught and can be debated in the schools and in informal settings in our countries, while using the incredible opportunity to have sort of a cross-border angles. That's why we are inviting you to a series of podcasts, Transition Dialogues, in which we will dialogue about three important topics. I'd like to invite you to the podcast on winners and losers of transition.
Dear Olena, hi.
Hello, Nora. Nice to hear you, actually. So we are here to discuss some transition topics, as I understand.
We are here to discuss not only one transition topic, but the most important transition topic, which is winners and losers of transition.
Yeah,
Olena,
cool.
would you consider yourself a winner of transition?
I think I'm completely winner of transition because I can freely move around everywhere. Then it's not COVID time, of course, and I can read freely. I can meet people without any problems, and I think for me it means that Soviet past is the past, and I can be free to do what I want. And for me, it's transition wins in my case.
Yeah, I
For you?
agree. And I think most people would agree that the younger generation, so what we called in our previous project, generation of transition, everybody who was still in school when 1990, 1991 happened, or who was even before school, that they are definitely the winners of transition because they got to experience a complete new life, new possibilities, new freedoms.
And I wonder who's losers then.
Who's losers? Yeah, who's losers? Well,
I have in mind. I have one category in mind, and
you have one
tell me.
category in mind. Let me know.
It's about all this generation of people who started working in in official system, for example in culture, like in libraries, in houses of culture, in all these networks around those. I think these people, they used to this stable life, and that they know what to do and what is their career path. And for them, losing this part of their life, it means just changes without any future understanding of what it will be. So for them, I think it's something that they lose, really, this stability.
Yeah.
And this kind of people, maybe they're losers in that dimension. And for you?
Yeah, well, I think I don't really like the word loser because especially in English, it sounds, as if you're on top of the fact that people lost something, you're also calling them bad names, which I don't think we should. But yeah, I think in the case of the GDR, it's exactly what you say. I even looked up some numbers before. I think in the GDR there were like almost 4 million people who one way or the other worked for the state or for state-owned enterprises, and of them more than half actually lost their job after 1990. And also, of course, all those people who worked in the state security organs, which in case for the GDR, it was 300,000 people. And they, of course, not only lost their job, but actually they were afterwards, rightly or not rightly, I think it depends on the person and on the case, but they were also criminalized, yeah, for their lives. So not only were their lives worthless, they maybe even had to come to terms with the fact that they might have done something bad, yeah, with their lives. So in one day they were achieved members of society, and on the next day they were even villains. So yeah, I think it was similar for Ukraine and for Soviet Union, but maybe not that much.
You're
How
right.
was it for you actually?
Yeah, and actually, I did interview with one guy who used to be the KGB, some ranking person. Like he had this honor to be in KGB, and he told that, I serve my country, and my country was Soviet Union, and so for him it really was like a disaster because his country is disappear.
Yeah.
I was disappear. Yeah. So for him, it's like personal tragedy because he said that he, like, part of him doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I think
Right.
Case of GDR is quite particular because in our transformation story, winners and losers, West and East, they clashed right within one country, yeah, even right within one city here in Berlin. And I think that also made created some aspects that maybe in Ukraine you don't have them. For instance, about East German university degrees or professional degrees, yeah, that people would be a bit frowned upon, like, okay, you have like a less education. It's not that much worth like a Western education. For instance, now you can also see that in public debate when people like to talk about, oh, what was Angela Merkel's like doctor's thesis? And that's a bit funny because everything that happened in the GDR is something like kind of exotic and mysterious and maybe even suspicious. And what did these people do there when they were traveling to Moscow or St. Petersburg during their studies? Whoa, it's like something so from a different planet. And to me, that's kind of absurd because that was just the reality of lives of 1/3 of Germany and basically half of Europe. So why to make it, into something less and into something exotic? So maybe that's a bit further than winners and losers, but yeah, that's also part of the discussion that we have here.
I listened to one podcast from the USA, and guys told about this Terman guy who discovered first musical instrument, electronical one. This is Terman box that is you can play with your hands. And he was the KGB agent, and he presented to the American ambassador, US ambassador in Moscow, some present with pioneers. By pioneers, and they present some eagle or something like this, but its eagle has some spine device inside that works without any electricity. It was like something innovative, and they discovered it only after 7 years. And what is funny that these guys from the USA, they say, and after that case, I never believe in pioneers. I always thought that they are spies, all of them. So I think, yeah, that Western understanding of all this how to say territory, with people who lived here in the Soviet time. For them, all these people was kind of spy in any case, even it's not true.
But
yeah.
Yeah, your story also refers to the quality of education. So if they were able to make such advanced devices, education could not have been so bad for these
great
spies.
great people were everywhere, like now also.
I assume that you would say it's not done with transition, but let us know.
I love this answer that one of my respondents gave me after I asked that question, actually. And this person said that for me, transition is not done till the moment then people in all official structures, like services, will smile. Because now nobody smiles. And this is like Soviet past, like pushing on them in the past, and they're so sad. So I think transition is not done in Ukraine, but the same time, we always have some changes, and less and less we have things that remind a Soviet past, because it's already 30 years after. And it's a lot of time. I think it's the time itself changed the situation. And what in the case with Eastern Germany, actually, what can you share about this?
I really like this idea about smiling in public institutions, but I think for Germans we are more serious and more focused on hard facts. So I guess for us, I think transition or unification would be over in the case when there is really equal standard of living and equal opportunity to participate in society. Because it's still the case, for instance, maybe people in Eastern Europe will not even know about it or won't think about it, but salaries, for instance, are lower in Eastern Germany in comparison to Western. Pensions are lower, even life expectancy is lower, and there's much less possibility for employment. There's less industries there. Infrastructure is in many, especially rural areas, in a bad shape. So yeah, we do not have a real equality here. And the question is really also what would be the goal? Yeah, what would be the end goal? You say it should be smiles on people's faces. I agree with that, but if unification, yeah, for the case of Germany, we always have this bigger half that we have to compare ourselves with. And so our goal would be to be equal, to have equal chances, to have equal possibility for political participation. And in this sense, we have a very long way to go because we're just two generations behind. The East Germans didn't take part in a race happening for 2 generations, and of course now we are very much in the back. And also, I think many East Germans, they didn't even understand what is the race that's happening there, what are the rules of the games, what do they have to do, and they're just slowly understanding it and yeah, taking part.
I think in our case, it's actually to be serious, it's corruption itself because it has huge influence on uh, all how to say spheres, spheres of our life. And we have corrupted the worst. It's our justice system is corrupted, so you can't catch anybody, even you will. They just give freedom to such people. So, and from this point, you can't change anything in the country, and for better, then the justice system itself is corrupted. So, I think it's so important for Ukraine to really moved on with this corruption issue. If we will have changes here, it will be already a huge achievement of transition. So we are hoping.
But why do you think corruption is still such a big issue? I mean, it's quite natural, yeah, that it developed in the 90s. But why 30 years on and you had how many revolutions? 2, 3 in Ukraine? I stopped counting.
I just think that because we didn't have real clearance of the system, so we have the same people who used to be in Soviet time. They were komsomols or party people, and after that they stayed in the system, and they just adapting. And all this old generation, they bring new people who they teach how to do all this stuff. I remember my shock. Then I went to the university, and everybody there told me that you need to learn how to give bribes to have good marks on your exams. And for me, it was shock. Like, you know, for young person just after school, then you know that honesty and really brave heart is mean a lot. To hear that it's mean nothing in this world. So I think this system is really like needs some clearance, and I think it can be done only if we will clear first this justice system. Because how you can catch anybody on corruption if they stay free? They just can run away, and this is the problem. So we move, but so slow. Not as Poland or Germany. We are unfortunately not so happy yet.
We moved kind of too fast. For many people now say we moved too fast, but if we have a look to countries of like Ukraine or the former Soviet Union, other countries, it's really we can see what would have happened if we didn't have this bigger West Germany to unite with, that we can now all our negative emotions we can just blame on them. But yeah, if you don't have this partner for transition, of course, there are a lot of much worse issues that are coming with it, and maybe even more people who turn into losers of transition. I read the survey, and actually most of the East Germans nowadays, three decades later, they consider themselves winners. So actually everybody in East Germany now, even the ones who maybe had a bad time or suffered from losses in the 90s, now I think more or less the majority of people considers themselves winners. And I'm not sure if that applies for Ukraine, for example.
Yeah, I think it's not the work. I think actually what is also we need to mention that we had this time after Soviet disappearance, yeah, that we had this privatization, and then everybody received a little part of the country, yeah, for himself.
Yeah,
And
the
they had the
vouchers.
vouchers, yeah, and all
Great
these
system,
vouchers.
actually.
Yeah, and all vouchers was bought for nothing from the people, and all this people who bought these vouchers, they now oligarchs, yeah, and
Yeah.
they received factories. So in any case, we had this feeling like big somebody smarter, bigger came and took our future from us. So I think here we are on the same page. Like East Germans think about West Germans.
Yeah.
That they took their perspectives. We have this understanding that maybe our oligarchs took everything from us.
But I think maybe with a little but significant difference that these oligarchs are, people from your own country. So,
Yeah,
I don't know how to interpret it, but it's still like you have this, if you want to call it an enemy, you have it within your country. And I think the story with the voucher, it goes very much to the core of the question of winners and losers, because we had this very strange situation that in socialist or communist countries, everything belonged to everybody. So all factories, the whole infrastructure of the state was the property of everybody. And then was the task how to how to transform this property of everybody into property of one concrete person. And in Germany, we had this approach with the agency called Treuhand, trust agency, who was basically selling this state property to everybody who wanted to buy it. And actually the Soviet approach to divide these vouchers, in this sense, it was more just, because you were a worker in a factory and here you go, you receive the voucher to your own factory. Yeah? I don't know. What do you think? Would you have preferred this German approach with private companies coming and buying the industries?
I think that in any case, in your situation, it's more clear, and it's you see results. They are better, really. So I think in case then you receive your voucher and you are not educated how to use it. You never thought about you didn't know about economy at all, anything. Like you're living all your life on like a factory worker or some kolkhoz worker like from the village, and you never thought about this as a perspective. So you just give it for free, or even worse, somebody will come and took it from your with some guys with militarian guys, yeah, or bandits. So I think it's more honest to be to really give opportunity to companies to buy, and in that case money is coming to the government and you have something in the budget. So maybe because I have this experience from my country, it was not so successful.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder what would have happened in the case of the GDR, because between this like the fall of the wall and what we now call reunification, there was this period where there was so much democratic activity in the GDR. Yeah, people really began to organize themselves at their workplace, in the factories, in the schools. There was a lot of like democracy on a small level happening. And I really wonder sometimes if people would have been giving these vouchers, maybe they would have even, you know, organized like communal way to run their business together or something like that. Yeah, it just sometimes I wonder if a bit more time for experiments might have brought us some yeah, interesting cases for today, more sustainable. There were more questions here, Olena. For example,
Yeah, let's try.
what were the biggest successes for Ukraine in transition?
I think the biggest for Ukraine is the freedom of speech, because if you compare it with Belarus, for example, or other countries, freedom of speech is not so freedom, yeah. It's really influenced. And in our case, also, I think it's great that we have different. Clans, or I don't know, different parties that they have interest in Ukraine, and we don't have one monolith leader who will be like a king for a country. So we always have this opportunity for revolutions, for changes, because so multi-perspectivity is present in our life, yeah, and that's freedom of speech and freedom of movement. It's the most important things that we receive. Other things maybe is not so great. And what do you think about Germany?
Yeah, I completely agree that sure, freedom of speech. I mean, for our generation, it's really hard to imagine how to live without it, basically. Freedom of movement, freedom also to choose your profession. Yeah, because in the GDR, you could not just become whatever you wanted. You had to follow a certain path that was meant for you. And I think also for Germany, which is kind of, yeah, after Poland, of course, we have our Polish colleagues here, maybe listening, is the country where transition began, and the peacefulness of the transition, I think, is the biggest success for the East German case. And I would like to point out that it's not only peacefulness from sides of protesters, but also from the side of the government, of the security organs, because in 1989 everybody had the pictures and stories from China in front of their eyes, where there were also huge protests and they were brutally beaten down. So I think in 89 in Germany, nobody could be really sure that this wasn't about to happen. People knew that this was kind of an option, and they were afraid, and I think both sides were afraid. And yeah, and that everything stayed peaceful. I think that's the biggest luck and the greatest success that we have for the transition of the GDR. They might have been kind of a wild and in many places rough time, but there was no hunger, there was no very severe poverty, there was no like criminal activities so out of hands as they were in Ukraine or Russia or other parts of the former Soviet Union. So I think overall the successes were overweigh the shortcomings that we might have had. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you that you really have the best scenario that can be in such situation.
I wanted to add something about losers of transition, because all of this discussion of losers and of being overprivileged, the East Germans have this feeling. Of course, that's also a reason for the success of right-wing parties here in Germany. Many people vote for right-wing populist parties also out of kind of a feeling that they have not been given a political voice. They do not have a political elite that kind of speaks for them and represents themselves. And in this case, I think losers of this transition are we all and our democracy. Because if these parties gain more support, it's bad not only for East Germany but also for Europe in general and for our neighbors like Ukraine. So yeah, winners and losers of transition might even be there where we least expect it, because these consequences of what happened in these 30 years, they affect everybody in the end. If you could decide what should happen to Ukraine in 1991, do you think that you could find a way to make something better than it happened finally, or would you give some advice maybe to those in charge in these days?
Nice question. I think it's really important to have such support from other countries, to have maybe extra education. That's what I think is most important for the starters, people who start some new life. And after this disappearing of Soviet actually structure, it was, I think, important to educate people how to live in new life, how to live in this free world. And this is if I could choose such a scenario, the best way is to make some programs and to educate people, to give some time for a country, I don't know, a year or 2, 3, to start new life, and then it can work better, much better. But to be honest, it's so hard to change yourself, and how we can imagine to change whole society. It's a long way. You can't do it in just in one moment. It's always generations and generations. So it's really took some generations, few generations to create Soviet person. Yeah. And now it will be a few generations to create new people.
Capitalist persons. I don't know if it's something that we should look forward to. Maybe you tell me, Olena, if you say that, it can't happen from 1 second to the next, this transition, and it was a very tough job for these generations that had to go through it. Would there be a transition that maybe awaits our generation that could be just as intense? And how could it look like? Where could we be transitioning towards?
I think we make a transition from this society with borders to whole world society, a global one, with some vertical perspective, like you told it, Mars perspective. We will be absolutely different in future, and all this information changes what we have now. It will create new person. We are overwhelmed by information, so I think it will be new countries, and it will be maybe one whole nation. I don't know. I don't see this nationalistic ideas in the future, to be honest, so much, because it will be new planets. How we can say that I'm German or I'm Namibian or anywhere, anybody, if you're going to Mars, for example.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty exciting outlook to have. And
what for you? What is for you? Tell me.
for me, well, to say what could have been done better, maybe first of all, in case of the GDR transition. I think it's really these. The first question is actually who could have done something better, because I think the problem was that people were so used to having a clear political actor who's acting on their behalf and driving things into a certain direction, and suddenly this shifted from ship that steers into one direction to to many different actors who had different interests in mind and followed through with them. So I don't know what could be the advice, but I think what people were lacking in this period, that also refers to what you said, Olena, is ownership, both of the political process, to have the feeling to be involved, to have the feeling to being able to shape something, to have influence on your surroundings, on your everyday surroundings, and not feeling powerless. And the other aspect of ownership is, of course, also ownership of property. Yeah, so this is why I like this idea with the vouchers. I mean, in the end, the individual voucher was worthless, but it was at least some kind of an attempt. Maybe not a super well thought through attempt, but it was an attempt to kind of just divide this property that was there and give people a chance to organize it for themselves. And for future transition, I can only join you in saying that I hope that this globalization, information overflow, hypermobility, that it leads us somewhere good. I think we are still in the process where we can also shape that and influence that. And now with the pandemic, I think it gives us a good point and momentum to kind of also think about where we're heading, and if we actually have with us on our way everything we need. So yeah, I think it's great that we have this opportunity to do a podcast like this, where we get to reflect on what's happening.
Yeah, I just want to add, maybe from the perspective of this voucher and your feelings that it can be better. I think it's so important to not be slave, in your mind. And after this time,
to not be what, afraid?
Slave, like,
slavery. Slave.
Yeah. So I think we need to change our mindsets and to be flexible and to develop ourselves. Then we will be not the Soviet people anymore. We can learn how to use such vouchers. We can learn how to live free life, really, and this is important.
Olena, did you want to add something?
Oh, I think that it's wonderful to learn learn from stories, and to be more, how to say, smarter for future. So I hope all future transitions will be better. And Nora, thank you actually for this conversation very much.
And thank you very much.
This podcast was part of a Transition Dialogue project. Transition Dialogue, dealing with change in democratic ways.